What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Commercial Kitchen Chronicles. Tonight, I am joined by a very special guest, Preston Collier from JB Industries. Preston is a. Are you an area rep or a sales rep or sales manager? Territory.
Yeah, so I'm a technical title regional sales manager. So I cover South Texas, Louisiana, and then manage some of our reps down here.
So you manage the heat, and humidity. It sounds like.
Yeah, it's definitely been a summer of that. This year, not as bad as last because we did get a little bit more rain. We had the hurricane that rolled through. So last year, it was a drier, but we still get the humidity being in the Gulf. But yeah, this year was definitely had its days of 100 degrees and 90% humidity.
that that sounds excruciating. If it gets 100 degrees in Indiana, like we're not leaving the house. We're staying and hiding. Did were you the one that had some Indiana ties, or was it somebody else?
Yeah, no, I'm originally from Indiana. So I
That's
was, yeah, I was born in Michigan, but I was raised in Elwood, so not too far from you, actually.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're 5 minutes from me, so that's kind
Yeah,
of wild. That's funny how it all works out. So
yeah, small world.
yeah, we originally did this episode a while back. It was me, you, and Rich. We did it pre-recorded and covered a bunch of stuff. Unfortunately, the audio just got too jumbled up, and I couldn't make it work out. So we've been trying to get this back on. It's been a long summer. You sales guys, territory guys, you make the rounds to all your supply houses and do your pump rebuild days and all that cool stuff. So I finally got you tracked down and get you back on here. So I'm good to, I'm glad to see you and good to have you on again, man.
Yeah, glad to be back. So thank you for once again having us. We appreciate any opportunity to kind of get out and spread the word about JB and show what we are.
Yeah, that's really cool. I did manage to go up to Aurora and I hung out with Paul. That's a cool dude, man. Paul is awesome. Uh,
Yeah.
does not get on social media, it seems like. Does not want nothing to do with none of that, but he really loves JB and everything they have going on. And he had a slideshow for me and put me in the room and showed all kinds of stuff. And he's really proud of what JB has built and what they do there. And it was cool to see. And then I got to do the factory tour. And it's amazing how much stuff is actually made right there in Aurora, Illinois. And most of it's USA sourced components. Like your brass comes over from Ohio, and it was really cool to see the whole process, man. You guys, it's not a huge facility, but you guys are cranking out some stuff in there, man.
Yeah, and that's, Paul absolutely loves it. And he is one of my favorite people to be around and hang out with. But it is an easy product line to kind of fall in love with and to get behind like that because of the ties. We are a true American manufacturer. Not a ton of people in the HVAC industry can say that. I would say 85 to 90% of our SKUs are actually made by us here in the United States. Like you said, we try to source USA products wherever we can, and even raw product. Like you said, our brass all comes from Madden Brass, Chase Brass in Ohio. And we have great relationships with a bunch of people throughout the U.S. Where we source a lot of things. So if we can't make it in house, we try to find somebody who can do it here in the United States, and then even try to find the raw product that we can do it with as well.
Yeah, I was like a little kid, man, wandering around a facility. I just wanted to record and take video of everything, and I know a lot of it's proprietary stuff. And I got to take some videos and stuff, but it was just cool. Like even all the workers, the sense of pride they have and like what they're doing, and like they'd all smile and wave and talk about what they're doing if I had questions. And it was really cool to see, that kind of, uh, business. It's really cool to see. So
Yeah, I love going out there, especially like you mentioned the workers. We have a huge employee retention rate
mhm.
at JB. So a lot of our employees out there have been working there for 20, 30 plus years. We had two ladies who have retired within the last 2, 3 years who had been there for over 50 years, or one had been there like 51, one had been there 49 years. So, and the one lady, Christina, she had been there for over 50 years. Her job when she was there is every access fitting that we sent out, gets a Schrader in it. and that was her job, is to sit there, put Schraders in to torque them down. And for 50 years, that's what she did, and she loved every day of it. So going out there and seeing how excited that the workers get to be, helping out and building product and supporting contractors, and it's a really, really cool thing.
That's cool. Yeah. And I mean, you guys make a ton of products. I mean, it didn't even, I went through a lot of the stuff because, you go in that room and they have everything on display you guys make. And it's like, oh, I didn't know you guys made that. I didn't know you guys made that. And it's really cool to see. It's just so much stuff out there that, it has JB on it, and it's cool. It's got the American flag on it. And it's a really great company. So, and,
Well, and then like you saw the old Davenport machines, which is
oh,
what we turn, most of our brass with. I mean, those things date back to the early 1900s, when those were really used. And now we have, goodness, over 20 of them, that are constantly running. One of them, all it does all year long is run 1/4 inch caps. And so we produce 4 or 5 million, 1/4 inch caps every year. One machine or it's actually a couple machines now dedicated to just caps. So it's a pretty incredible and awesome operation.
yeah, it was cool. It's cool to see. Um, One of my favorite things was like when they were brazing together. I think I took a video of it. They were brazing together a T, or like a swivel T or something. And those machines are cool. They just got them lined up and they're just running them through there, braze them together, and does a really good job. And then it's cool to see.
Hmm. And
So,
there's so much history in the building.
oh yeah,
Like,
that's what I was
like
saying.
so it started out, the first thing that was ever manufactured there back in the late 1800s, early 1900s was it's called a Western wheel scraper. So it's essentially a road grader. So
Mhm.
they used them in the railroads and to try to level and flat ground. Um, and then once the world wars hit, they actually shifted to producing tanks out of there, and it sits right on a railroad. So they were able to make all the tanks and all this heavy equipment, load it right onto the trains and ship it out. Tons and tons of history in that building. Always been a manufacturing, spirited building, and we're lucky to be able to continue that on in 2024.
Yeah, the office is cool. Like the artwork and like the old handcrafted stuff. It's like it looks like almost like a school from the outside, but it's
Hmm.
not. But like everything in there, you can just tell is handmade. And it's like it's old, but it's like it's really cool. It's really well taken care of, and you can tell JB takes pride in their facility.
Yeah,
So you know, everybody knows JB for their tried and true vacuum pumps. I mean, that's the heart. I think, I think JB Industries, that's what I think of is the vacuum pumps. And you guys have a ton of pumps now. It's not just the old single 7 CFM, you guys are just cranking out. You have you want to get into different pumps you guys have and some of the, options you can get?
absolutely. So, yeah, like you said, we're probably known for our pumps. We're more than a pump company, and we're branching out, but that's definitely what the JB moniker holds. So now it's kind of changed. So with a lot of this A2L stuff coming out,
Mhm.
we did have to make a few adjustments to some of our pumps to be kind of compliant with the regulations on that. But what we've always had is two series of pumps. So we've always had our Platinum series and then our Eliminator series. So Platinum has always been kind of our premium line. You get a little bit more with it. Instead of two intake valves, you get three. You get a lift ring handle. You get your blank off valve, your gas ballast valve. So you get just a few more, benefits with the Platinum than you would on the Eliminator. Um, so we've always been big into listening to contractor feedback and listening to the people who are actually using our tools. So we came out with what we're calling the Platinum Pro. So this is a pump where we took all the feedback we get from contractors and stuff that not necessarily the guys didn't like, because everybody loves JB pumps, but maybe something that they would want improved or adjusted, and we really listen to that feedback. So on the Platinum Pro, biggest feedback we get from our pumps is, hey, they tip over in the work truck. I hit my brakes, I make a turn, and my pump tips, and then the oil spills out. So what we did was we widened out the base and then we dropped the center of gravity on that, so it doesn't tip over as easily, which is really nice. Um, the next thing we did was the feet on the bottom. Those tended to pop out if you slide it. So we screwed those feet in so they don't pop anymore. We gave you a spot on the side on the base plate for your caps. So when you take off your caps, you don't set them on the top and then they vibrate off. You can actually put them down in a tray.
Roll across
Same
the
for your cores. Pardon?
roll across the roof.
Yeah, and then you kick them, and then you can never find them, and then you ended up, it's amazing some of the stuff I've seen people use on their pumps as a mock cap.
So you got a spot there. You can put the Schrader cores too.
Yeah,
What other features you got? I was at AHR. We kind of talked a little bit there, and I was really impressed with that pump. Because like you said, that thing they tip over in the van, and if you got the right van, you can keep them in that little wheel and that well in your side step. But some guys don't like it there, and center of gravity is a lot lower. It's got a lot better base on it, and man, it's pretty sweet.
yeah. So it really solved a lot of those problems that guys had. Another kind of uh, great feedback thing was the oil and the whole oil management system. So the drain on the bottom was kind of a pain at times. Some guys if they dropped their pump on the tip of it, it would kind of crush that drain and make it really hard to open. They'd get clogged up. It wasn't a real big drain. So we adjusted that out. We put a quarter turn ball valve on the front of it, and then it gives you a 1/4 inch opening on the bottom. So the oil really drains out much, much faster. We upped how much oil it can take. So now it takes 1 whole quart of oil, which is really important because oil is really the heart of all of the vacuum pump. So it does three main things. It's a coolant, it's a lubricant, and it's a sealant. So most oils are naturally coolants coolants or lubricants.
Mhm.
The thing about vacuum pump oil is we're removing non-condensables, removing moisture, contaminants from the system. So those all have to have a place to go. So that's the oil. So that's where it's a sealant. So it keeps all that stuff, harbors it all in, and allows you to pull a deep vacuum. So having more oil, you're able to trap more contaminants, run the pump for a little bit longer versus some other pumps out there that have limited quantities of oil. And then the other nice thing with having that whole quart of oil is actually the oil fill. So we give you a much bigger spout on the top and then put a piercing valve in it. So now you just take your whole quart of oil, shove it down into the fill. It pierces that little foil on the top. You give it a twist, and then it fills it to the perfect line every time.
Yeah, that's the greatest feature because we all get that little funnel that comes with the oil. When you buy it, you lose it. Then you're like, "How can I get oil in this thing?" You're making funnels out of paper or whatever. Um,
Yeah,
I understood the importance of oil, but I didn't understand as much as till I went to the facility and they explain why you want to change your oil. And I never thought of it this way, but the moisture doesn't. You can't condense it. It stays whatever size it is, it stays. And when you run that across those veins on that pump, it scores it and tears those veins up. And then that's how you lose your efficiency of your pump. It's because of the moisture in the oil. So that's another reason why you need to change your oil regularly is, to extend the life. And it's not because the oil is bad, it's because of the stuff in the oil that's going to tear up your pump.
yeah. I mean, and think, if you're pulling out a burnt out compressor and there's a bunch of acid in the system, all that stuff that you're pulling out of there, you're putting into your pump. So if you're just leaving that for, multiple months or, however long you're going, that's just eating away at, any kind of metal, any kind of seals, any kind of, internals of your pump.
In my world in the kitchens, we get a lot of leaks in condensate loops and coolers. So what that is they use a loop of coil or coil of copper, and it'll drain the water out of the evaporator pan, and it goes into a condensate pan. That loop runs through there, and they use it for a couple different purposes. It helps evaporate that water, but it also helps kind of subcool that liquid a little bit before it gets to that condenser coil. And the problem is it'll get a leak in there because the acid in the food and the product, if it's not coated, and then it kind of venturis and like sucks water into that system. And I mean, I've done some bad stuff, some pumps. I've tore some pumps up, man, because
Yeah.
it looks like milk. I've got some pictures and I need to go find them, but it's a Taco Bell cup and it looks like dirty milk's in it.
Yeah.
Not like chocolate milk, like white milk that looks kind of yellowish. It's like, what is this? I'm like, this poor pump just hates life, man.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, all that is just literally water and oil.
Mm,
So it makes an emulsification, and that's what you're seeing, and that's why it turns white. It's a really odd science thing. Like um, degassed oil is actually emulsifiable with water.
nice.
So unlike just natural, if you go to your kitchen cupboard and get oil and water and try to mix it, you can't. But you put it in a vacuum, and then for whatever reason you can. So it's interesting little science tidbit.
So you guys also came out with some other new let's say changes in your pumps. You have a battery powered pump now, right?
We do. So we've had that one out for a little bit, but it's really field tested now. Gotten a lot of great feedback on it. Guys really enjoy it. So it comes in either a 3 CFM or a 5 CFM. Excuse me. The nice thing about that is it's a DC motor, and then as well on that Platinum Pro, it's a DC motor, and that gives us the A2L benefit.
Yep.
So I know I kind of touched on it earlier and then never dove into it, but to be A2L compliant from a manufacturer tool manufacturer standpoint, we want to be spark free, so intrinsically safe. Um, so with an AC motor, which is what our old pumps were, you have a capacitor on that motor, you have windings, so you have a lot of things that are potential spark creators. So with a DC motor, everything is sealed up, everything's potted. You don't have to worry about any kind of spark being created. So by switching over to the DC motor, you get that benefit of, excuse me, you get that benefit of being A2L approved, which is really nice. So with the battery operated pump, so obviously a DC motor,
Mhm.
and then we give you our 9 volt, or sorry, 12 volt 9 amp hour battery along with that. Um, and then that can run the 5 CFM anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes. The 3 CFM can run anywhere from 90 minutes to 120 minutes on a full charge. So plenty of time for a standard system, residential, any kind of kitchen work. Smaller units like that are great. If you are a guy who does a little bit of light commercial work, the benefit to our battery operated pump is it's called the Flex, and that's because you can actually run it on AC power as well. So we give you an AC adapter with it that you can slide on to the battery where the battery goes in, and then you're able to plug that in to either a wall power extension cord, or it's a dual voltage converter, so you can actually take 240 back to that to the unit as well.
That's pretty good. So, Total Tech has a question. He says his JB Fast Vac 3 CFM isn't A2L compliant. You know anything about that?
The fastback three. So, I mean, if he's just talking about his pump, if he has a pump currently that is not a DC motor, then we do not mark those as A2L compliant.
Good to know. So hopefully that helps you out there, Total Tech. Um, that's cool, man. I seen a video going around. I hate to jump off topic. It's vacuum pump related, so I can say it.
Mhm.
Like one of the guys, I think it was up here in Indiana, maybe Kentucky. I think it's the same guy that does both states actually, but he was doing some like oil changes, on pump day, you know how it is, and like he did something where he like pretty much shot the oil out of this thing. Like, what
Yeah,
is that?
yeah. So that was our guy Dustin. He went like kind of viral
Yeah.
on Instagram with that video. So we call that a power flush,
Mhm.
or a flush. And it's actually written out in the manuals, because it is a super handy thing to know how to do. But most guys, they buy the pump, take it out of the box, grab the oil, and then just throw it all away. They don't bother to,
Mhm.
check on any kind of tips or tool or tidbits that come in those. So what you're doing there is you're drawing in air, and then you're blocking your exhaust. So then you're forcing the air out of your oil drain. So what that does is it gives you a much faster oil change, because obviously you're using force to blow it out. But also it's a much better oil change. So all of our pumps are two-stage vacuum pumps.
Hmm.
So what that means is in the cartridge, there's two stages to that. So there's an initial stage, and then there's a deep vacuum kind of stage. Is what kind of guys refer to it. So the only way for oil to circulate between those two stages is, a couple small holes about midway. So if you're just opening up your pump and letting it drain out, you're never fully getting all of that oil out of your cartridge. So by turning it on, and so how you do it is you open up one or more of the intakes on your pump, um, and then you're going to open up your oil drain, and then just turn on the pump. So you want to make sure you have a bucket or you're not by it, because it really
Oh
forces it out
yeah,
quickly.
I was blown away. I seen that and I was like, holy cow! I think my buddy Dave shared it. I was like, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah, yeah. So then just turn it on, and so our exhaust comes out of the handle.
Mhm.
So just grab the handle and put your thumb on the back of it, and so it's got air coming into the intakes. Air is not able to escape out of the exhaust. So then the only escape is out of the oil drain. So it forces everything out of the oil drain.
That's really cool. Yeah, and it was cool to watch because it came out with some force. You just gotta make sure you shut it off when you hear it change that tone, and
Mhm.
good to go.
Yeah, because it'll start creating a mist essentially,
Mhm.
and then at that point turn it off, and you'll still have oil dripping out of there.
Mhm.
So everything's still coated with oil. You don't have to worry about damaging the pump, as long as you're not running it for hours after you drain it out.
Mhm.
It's able to run for a little while without any oil in it, because there still is some oil covering everything.
That's cool. So, what has been blowing up the most is we're going to get into this because everybody seems to love these things. It's that climate class. Um, my buddy Blake has them, and every time he posts a story on Instagram, he has to tag me in it and rub it in my face. But those things are taking off, man. Those things are popular.
Yeah, so it's a really great introduction by us to kind of get into the digital space.
Mhm.
We've had our digital manifolds out for a while. We've kind of crept into there. A while back, we had a actual pressure temperature kind of gauge all in one. But now with this, it's essentially a pressure probe, um, wireless temperature clamp, and psychrometer kit. And it's been, like you said, it's been taken off really well. Techs seem to love it. So once again, we took a real tech-centric forward look at it. And we understand that, yeah, there are some other devices out in the market, but we got some tech feedback and understood, hey, this is what guys want on it, and we really attacked that and put out an awesome unit that has some features that nobody else has out there. Um, so on all of our devices, you'll see a readout directly on the device, so a screen, which is really nice. Is you don't have to be connected to your phone or an iPad. I can get my readout directly by looking at the device.
Mhm.
So that's a big feature. On our pressure probes, we actually have a charging port based directly on the back of it, so you don't have to tee off the system to charge, which is really nice. Our temperature clamps are a little bit bigger. They go up to 2.25 inches. So if you're working on any kind of bigger size pipe, you're going to be good to go with that. We have multiple ways to connect. So we have our app, which is the JB Go V2 app, and then also you can connect through MeasureQuick, which is a really cool
Mhm.
feature. I'm not sure if you guys or any of your listeners use that, but it's pretty cool.
That's a great app. I mean, there's a ton of information in there. I don't do a whole lot of HVAC or air conditioning work. I do refrigeration, and there's a little bit on there. But if you are a heat pump guy or an AC guy, you can do some pretty cool stuff with that app. It does a really
Yeah,
good job. So
yeah, it's almost information overload for for some people.
yeah,
Um,
for sure.
but yeah, so multiple ways to connect, which is really nice. And then one of my favorite parts is for actually the teaching aspect. Is we don't use a solid like Bluetooth connection. It's actually a beaconing connection. So if I'm in a teaching setting or if I'm trying to show somebody else something, there's up to I don't even know if there's a maximum. I know up to 20 or 30 because that's what I've seen connected to it can actually connect to the device. So you can have one device on a system and connect 20, 30 people to it, which is a really cool, interesting thing that not many other ones can do.
It's really cool. I use a feature like that when I teach. And so, because I teach refrigeration a couple times a year for Cefesa, and it's all about it's beginner level guys. They have to have their EPA, and we show them basics. I mean, I show them how to braise. We show them how to check superheat, subcooling, pull a vacuum, reclaim, just superheat, all that kind of stuff. And I show them, digital with wireless probes of some sort, and then I show them, analog, and I teach them both ways. But if that beaconing system could be a huge, because I'll have 12 to 16 techs in there, and they all, as soon as they see, oh, it's electronic, they want to get on their phone. Okay,
Mhm.
connect to it, and here you go. And it's really cool to see them play around on the app, and they can, they get to see what's going on in their own hand. They're not everybody trying to huddle over one phone or over a gauge set. And so it's a really great feature, especially like you said for teaching.
Yeah, and I mean with the probes, I honestly think that that's kind of where everything's heading. In your industry, you're seeing it a ton with critical charge stuff. I know a lot of the 290, the 600 stuff. You are 250 grams or less, so you're not dealing with a lot there. So if I'm hooking up a manifold every time, stealing X amount of refrigerant every time I hook up my hose. Eventually, I've taken out more than more than the system can handle. So I think that probes being you're not taking out as much refrigerant,
Mm.
the accuracy of probes versus standard analog gauges. With those critical charges, I just think that that's kind of the way of the future.
Yeah, it's definitely the way it's going, and I've always, I used before I even had probes, I used, the JBs, you get the little adapter. So it's not even a hose, it's just a little stubby and you just
Mhm.
screw it right on. And, I used to use that for critical charge and I stepped up and got some probes. But it's definitely the way to go. I hate putting gauges on anything, period, unless I absolutely have to. That's like a last resort. And that's how I teach my guys is don't put gauges. I don't care what's going on. Don't put gauges on until you know you got proper airflow. That's the last thing you want to do is touch that charge. But you'll still get guys come out with 6 foot hoses, and it's a R134 system holds 7.5 ounces, and they throw those hoses on there. It's low. I'm like, well, you sure didn't your hoses? I think it was Paul or whoever gave us the tour. I can't remember his name. I'm terrible. I'm sorry, but I'm terrible.
Dave.
Dave. I think he talked. I think he had a number of like how many
Uh,
ounces refrigerant holds
so
per
it's
for the hose.
a quarter-inch hose for every foot. It's a quarter ounce of refrigerant. Now it does deviate a little bit because obviously refrigerant densities, if it's a liquid, if it's a vapor, so it varies a little bit. But that's about the standard metric for it.
So just think about that. You gotta, yeah, you're wasting a lot of refrigerant there.
Yeah, so
And
I mean, on a 5 foot hose, you're taking out just an ounce, just over an ounce. So
yeah, that's definitely not cool to do because eventually it adds up. Even on bigger systems, it adds up over time.
mhm.
I do some ice machines and smaller ice machines. They don't hold a whole lot, but eventually we used to have a PM program where they wanted pressures checked. I'm like, that's the last thing you want to do. If it's working, why are you gonna check pressures? You're introducing a chance to for one, you may lose a Schrader when you pull a hose off. I mean, there's all kinds of variables you're introducing. It's like, why are we doing that? Eventually, we got away from it, but just think about it. You put 5 foot hoses on an ice machine 4 times a year. Eventually, you're going to start noticing, some issues.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if it's something 7 ounce of charge, if I'm doing that 4 times a year, that's half my charge.
Yeah, it's toast. So, yeah, that's cool to see. Yeah, that charging port in the backside is a game changer. Like that's one of my
Mhm.
that and the display are my two favorite features. Just because when I work on stuff before, I had a system that didn't have that charging feature, and then you put the probe on there, and you're like, oh, I gotta charge it, and like you can take it back off, screw a T on, screw your probe onto the T. Just like it introduces more leak points and on and off situations, and that just does away with it. And it's cool.
Yeah, and that's really the big thing is trying to limit leak points wherever you can. And that's, we see it big with guys wanting to pull vacuum through a manifold.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, why are you doing that? Well, my micron gauge is in my manifold. Well, now I'm creating how many more leak points, leading to my system that if I'm getting and I shouldn't want to read microns at a manifold level anyway, that should be at a system level. But now I have how many more leak points that if my micron reading is weird, now am I chasing it in a hose? Is it one of my O-rings? Is it the system? Is it so it's just creating guys a lot more work in their head and on a job.
Yeah, I'll tell a story about some hoses in a manifold, and it weren't yours, so I can't blame you guys. It was a brand new manifold, brand new hoses. It's like a second time I used them. I had to do a repair inside on a walk-in cooler, and I took the manifold up on the roof and pumped the system down. I was trying to pull a vacuum, dude, and I was like, man, I was like, I can't pull a vacuum to save my life. I'm like, I pressed our nitrogen. I checked all my stuff downstairs. I'm like, there's no leak in here. I was like, everything I did was right here. Where am I losing this? I go up on the roof, and the brand new hose has a leak right there where it's crimped on. Brand new hose. I fought it for like 2 hours, and I felt so stupid. Everyone was like, why did you have manifold on there? I'm like, I was using it to pump down the system up on the roof. I didn't think about it. I left it on there because it's on the roof. It's not, I wasn't going back up there until I released the charge.
Yeah.
But brand new hose had a leak at the crimp. So I was like,
Yeah.
I was ready to throw the whole manifold set off the roof.
And I mean, I can empathize in the pain, but I also, as a manufacturer, I understand it,
Yeah.
because we do all of our own crimps, and
Yep.
that's a beauty of our hoses is we actually crimp everything there, so it's not like we're third partying it where, we're not, if we don't go through every single hose, we're not going to know, if we see something wrong and we inspect it right after we crimp it. So it's really nice being able to have the control over that quality.
The hoses come in reels and they're American made.
Hmm.
It's like I'm like JV is they do their homework when it comes to what they put their name on. So it's
Yeah.
American made product. Now Total Tech had another question. He wants to know if you guys make those little R290 hoses. And yes, they actually make a little manifold for the R290s, those little bitty hard flexible hoses. So
Yeah, so they're called the reflex hoses, and so it's 3 pack of hoses, super small diameter, like 0.18 mil
mhm.
diameter. So you're not taking out that big charge. So we use those for all the hydrocarbons. So that's a great thing to use for those.
So another part is the micron gauge part of the climate class, or is it different? It's part of
No, so all of our digital stuff is kind of going to be in the climate class because
it. Okay.
everything's going to be able to talk and pair.
Yep.
Um, so the micron gauge is couple of really cool things, kind of groundbreaking things there. So we won a dealer design award on that this year, which is really awesome. But couple of the differences is so it's a longer, skinnier device than our old one, so it actually fits on the systems a little bit better. Gives you a little bit more room, especially for those HVAC guys who are working outside. In cases things get a little bit tight. So made it a little bit thinner. You can actually change the orientation of the screen. So kind of a small thing to some people, but if you've ever had a micron gauge in a very precarious area, and you're having to play Twister over the back of the unit to try to get a reading on it, it makes it nice to be able to flip it to where it faces you. But the biggest thing on that one is we actually made a removable and replaceable sensor in our unit. So now, if you're getting any kind of errant readings, any kind of weird bouncing around or no readings, you can actually take your sensor out and give it a good clean, and then put it back in. If it's still not working, now I can actually just buy a new sensor portion. Excuse me, instead of buying a whole new unit. So it's going to be about a third of the cost of a new unit. So you can go out, get that new sensor, and then have faith that you're reading good.
Yeah, I've heard about some guys. They'll buy a sensor, so they'll keep the sensor, and when it gets dirty, they'll just put the new one in it and clean the other one and keep it as a backup. And they always have a spare sensor because I mean I carry 3 or 4 um, micron gauges, and just for that situation. But if I can just carry uh, an extra sensor, it'd be a lot better off because I don't have to worry about it being dead because we all know how people are with batteries, man. I'm terrible.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing. All of our products use AA batteries. So it's not like rechargeable, where if I'm on a unit, something dies, now I got to go sit at my truck for 15, 20 minutes and hope I have enough power to get me through the rest of the job. I can just keep a simple pack of AA's because everything's AA's, and then keep my devices powered up.
Sweet. That's good to know because I think I've got double A's, triple A's, 9 volts, and even some CR 32s or whatever those little watch battery ones are. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it's a little excessive.
Yeah, and it's annoying when you have two devices from the same company and you open up one and it's a 9 volt and one's a AAA and one's
Yeah, it's definitely a pain in the butt. So, um, so you guys, I mean, you guys make a lot of different products. You guys have, vacuum pumps, the climate class stuff, your tried and true manifolds. I mean, you guys have 4 port, 3 port. I mean, you guys make a manifold for about every refrigerant known to man out there, I think.
Yeah, and we always make a joke because I mean you saw it, but our manifold department, there's, gosh, it seems like hundreds of different gauges out there
Mhm.
that they're screwing onto them. But we kind of refer to it as like the Burger King because it really is kind of have it your way because we can produce our own stuff. It's not like, once again, not like we're getting it shipped in and then shipped out. Um, we can kind of make those adjustments for hoses. We've had some really odd requests, from somebody who worked on a port. They needed a 300-foot vacuum hose. So we're able to do something like that because we cut and crimp all of our own hoses. But yeah, we always refer to it kind of as the Burger King because you can have a 3-valve Patriot, a 3-valve Zeppelin, with whatever kind of different gauge combinations you want, and glow in the dark or backlit or
Fluid filled, non-fluid filled. Yeah,
yeah,
it's you're only limited by your imagination when it comes to their products.
yeah,
Um, they were talking about the hose thing, and yeah, that's what they said. They're like, we'll make you whatever you want if you want to pay for it.
yeah, yep,
And it's humongous rolls of hoses, and they're just cutting them to length and crimping them and testing them. And it's pretty cool to see. Um, let's see what else. I think I wanted to cover something else. Oh, Brian mentioned it. That little Schrader tool, the little Schrader tool, like
hmm
that thing. I I'm guilty, man. My torque is whatever I stop at, and it's generally way past where it needs to be. So I know I'm guilty of crushing Schrader cores out there all across the central Indiana region. But you want to talk about that little tool? I mean, it seems silly, but it's actually does a really great job.
Yeah, so we have two different ones. So we have the actual torque tool. So it's just built in to a standard handle, and then we have one built into one of our core remover tools, which is really nice
Yep.
because as soon as you pull that out, when I'm putting it back in, I can actually set it to the proper torque. So as you said, everything has a proper torque. So for Schrader valves, it's 3 to 5 inch-pounds of pressure. So that's a very hard concept for people to understand, especially when after a long hot day you're just trying to get off the job. But it's not a ton of pressure, um, and so a lot of the times, like you said, guys go in there real hard until they crush a Schrader, and then generally what they do is actually under tighten.
Mhm.
So who knows how many leaks there have been around the country of guys who had just crushed a Schrader and then the next one they under tightened a hair. But this takes all the guesswork out of it. So you throw it on there and it's got a clutch built into the back of it at 3 to 5 inch-pounds. So when you hit that pressure, it'll just clutch out. So I can't tighten it anymore. Um, but makes it a super super handy coming on the core tool itself. Just built right into the back of it. So as I'm tightening that back in, I never have to wonder if it's over tightened, under tightened. So it makes it nice.
That core removal tool is pretty sweet. I like that big handle, that big slide for the valve part on there. Like, that's great. You know, a lot of them have the smaller ones on the side, but that big one just it feels good in the hand. You can work with your thumb nice and easy. It doesn't take up a whole lot of room for what it is, and I think that's a pretty good feature.
Yeah, and that was one thing we're really, because talking about space on a system, you don't have a ton of space. So our old one was built off to the side, and it was a true 90, like a ball
Mhm.
valve. So this one, we really wanted to, like you said, make it to where you could work it with your thumb, so it just goes forward and back, and you're taking up no extra space on the sides because all the motion is front and back. So I don't have to worry about, hey, is my system too tight to where I can't turn this 90? And then you're always going to have a little bit of room above or below. So that's why we went with that feature.
Sweet. So I got a couple of questions here. Total Tech, he's been all over it tonight. He wants to know how long before a hose should be replaced purely based on its age.
Case by case, honestly, where you live, how much sun they're getting, because hoses are susceptible to UV damage, so they dry rot, they get old. So I mean, I've seen some. And it's actually another kind of step that we took. We actually in the store, our hoses are in a UV protected bag because we had some issues where some wholesale houses had them setting directly in a window, and the sun getting on them. A contractor would get them, and the hoses would be in rough condition already. So we put those all in UV resistant bags now. But yeah, it's really just a case by case basis. As long as your O rings are holding up well, and you're not getting any kind of permeation or blowout in it, you're good to go with them.
Yeah, that's another thing. When I first started refrigeration, I didn't know about was changing the hoses. I was just the hose gaskets. I just replaced the hoses. And like, feel like you can just like change that gasket and you can adjust that depressor in there, right? And I was like, what?
Yep.
It's mind blowing. Even the low loss ones, you can pop that little clip out and you can rebuild those as well. I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
how much
And
money?
we make a low loss fitting as well where you can take the whole head off.
Mhm.
So you can actually replace the whole head and then rebuild it at another later time if you wanted to. So just makes it a whole lot easier on you guys, not having to bust it down in the field and get out your snap ring pliers and end up losing something under an oven.
So mechanical environments, she goes, I don't know if it's Megan or Matt. So swivel tees, they are brass on brass flare connection. Should they be using a copper flare gasket like you would see on a flare size adapter? Some thoughts for this week. So some shower thoughts for this week, she says. So what do you guys recommend? Just a little bit of lubricant on the threads and that's it? Or what do you guys recommend on that?
um, yeah, that would be my best recommendation. Because you don't want to create any more issues
Mhm.
by putting anything in there, and creating a possible leak point. So I'm not super, well versed in that facet of it,
Mhm.
but my unofficial advice would be yes.
Is there a torque rating on those? Because they're saying that a quarter service port was damaged from an over tightened swivel tee, and they couldn't find an official install manual to reference. Is there an actual torque requirement or torque suggestion for those brass swivel tees?
That one I can get back with. Off my head, I'm not 100% sure, but I can email you that information and then you could put it out.
Yeah, if you would, I'll put it out when I release episodes.
Yeah,
You got a couple days, so
yeah,
get back to me on that. That was a different one because, yeah, Brian says no more than two Ugga Duggas. I am the Ugga Dugga king. My Ugga Duggas aren't your Ugga Duggas, Brian. So
yeah.
it's two different references there. So yeah, that's really cool. Um, you guys do have a Core Max removal tool, and I'll leave it at that. Um, that's everyone's favorite core removal tool. Hate it or love it, it serves a purpose.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a
if you've come across them, then you understand the struggles.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I've learned from my past issues with it is I actually take 2 wrenches and break it loose and then snug it back up so it's not leaking, and then use the tool removal because I had one that was literally I don't know who put this thing on there, but they must have used the Milwaukee Impact and just gave it hell. And
More than Brian's two Ugga
oh, I broke the tool. Like I just bought this tool and broke it. And I was so mad. But it is what it is. Uh, just make sure you break it loose with wrenches first, put it back together is what I like to do, and I don't have a problem now, so I won't beat them up for that. I can't blame the tool for someone else's problem. So, anything else you want to talk about? I mean, there's a ton of stuff out there. It's just there's stuff people don't even know. You guys make the shield refrigerant locking caps.
Mhm.
You got parts for all your tools. If you have a pump issue, you can send your pump in to get it rebuilt. You can buy a rebuild kit and do it yourself. I mean, those pumps are made to last your career. Is all on how you take care of them.
Yeah, well, I was doing a pump day today, and then had one that was about 20 years old. So it was built in 2005, so 19 years old. But still running. The guy changes his oil. He said not every time, but pretty religiously. And as long as you're doing that, that's really the only thing in those things that can go wrong.
Yep, yep. That's why I said I didn't realize the science went behind it. And when I came up to your facility, they did a really good job explaining everything. And it was one of the funnest tours I've done as a facility. The history and this is a sense of pride, but Paul showed a lot of information, went through a lot of stuff, and did a really good job. So next time you talk to Paul, tell him I said hello and thanks for everything.
Absolutely, I will. I will.
Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I mean we kind of knocked it out. Just hey, proud to be an American manufacturer. Quality product that can be rebuilt, field serviceable. It's tough. So just happy to be able to be on here and kind of talk a little bit more about JB and let people know that even though we do hold those monikers of tough, rugged, that we are up to date with the times and our climate class stuff. And top of the tier technologies there, which is really nice. So never stopping and always moving forward.
Sweet. So you don't have to tell me for sure, but you guys don't have anything new next year at AHR?
We will. I'll tease it there.
You heard it here first. There will be something new, so I will be hanging out at the booth. I'll make sure I come see Preston, else is over there. I felt kind of stalkerish last year because I'm actually a pretty shy person, and I get the press pass from the podcast. And I came in early, and I'm like hanging around this booth, and these guys are like, "Who's this weird guy just hanging around our booth? Show's not even open yet." So
Hey, no, you're always welcome over there. We'll be glad to show whatever's new, show some of the old stuff. So
sweet. Well, I look forward to seeing you again in wonderful Orlando in February. So, but I appreciate you taking time to come on the show and talk about JB. Make sure you tell everybody that we said hello and we appreciate all they do for the industry and support. So, have a good night, man.
thank you, Pat.
See ya.